My Hero Academia is the single series I actually watch weekly and care about in a large capacity. Also, I feel like I have a decent amount to say about this, and I will not be using any footage from the anime because that is an easy ticket to copyright strikes. So, let's get on with the usual. Hey guys, I'm Tiller. Usually I make videos on games and reviews of games and things like that, but this week we're going to be doing something a little different. We'll be talking about Season 5 of My Hero Academia. Also, I livestream on Twitch at twitch.tv/tillerbrick. So if you want to check me out there, you can do that. Otherwise, stay tuned. So, a few disclaimers. I will not be referencing any future events of the story. I am incredibly cautious about doing this. I do not like to spoil people on things like that. And I know that spoilers are a very sensitive topic. So I will not be touching on anything that happens in any capacity past Season 5. If you haven't watched Season 5 and you don't want to be spoiled, you can click the plus save button at the bottom underneath the video to save this to your watch later playlist so you can watch it after your Season 5 viewing experience. As usual, this will be separated into a rant and a rave. I did enjoy this season, but I want to get to the stuff I did enjoy out of the way, so we're going to start with the rave. Also, I will be dividing each segment of the video into each arc that appears within the anime. So, let's get into it. So overall, I think Season 5 is pretty solid. The first 13 episodes, the joint training arc, along with the Pro Hero arc, I'm going to combine these into two because it doesn't make sense to separate the Pro Hero arc since it's one episode, essentially. So we get an introduction to remaining Class B members, and this arc was pretty action-packed. I had no real issues when reading it weekly in the manga, and having these moments animated was honestly pretty cool. I generally enjoyed it. Midoriya and Bakugo's fights were fantastic, and there was a lot of justice done for those. Match 1 and 3 were both given just the right amount of time, I feel. I feel like the production value for this arc in comparison to the rest of the season is fairly high. On the other hand, the Pro Hero arc we got this season was handled pretty well. There are some things I want to talk about with these two arcs, but those are more ranty, so I'm going to get into those later when we get to the rant. So, weirdly enough, there was an arc swap. In the manga, My Villain Academia actually comes before this arc, in case you didn't know. But I'm sure you've probably heard, because no one will shut up about it. There are reasons for it. I'm sure you can argue whatever, but it's never been explicitly stated, so we don't know for sure what the reason is. And I'd rather not get into the whole conspiracy theory nonsense that it seems like everyone has been getting into. I don't think that it's handled poorly. I think the arc shift could work, and it did work decently, at least for some of it. There wasn't a huge amount of spoilers. You're probably, if you're an anime only, you're probably not going to realize things like Redestro, and you feel like it matters all that much. I don't think the League of Villains being alive is a big spoiler. I think I'll talk about what I feel about that a little bit later, but the League surviving is mostly a given for this. But I guess I would say that Redestro surviving is a little bit of a spoiler. But I don't think it's that huge of a deal. This arc does give anime viewers a whole new experience and a ton of different questions than we had when we were reading the manga. And I wouldn't say that I'm super happy with the arc swap, but it provided a different perspective. When I looked on anime-only threads to see how they felt about stuff and the things they were seeing, I often saw different observations being brought up, and I thought it was a very interesting perspective. The Kurogiri episode was phenomenal from start to finish, and I adore this part of the series because it gives us a little bit of insight into Aizawa's teaching philosophy and his past. So My Villain Academia, I think, was done fairly well. I think for the most part it does everything it needs to do. It establishes the villains as a remaining threat, even though Midoriya and the rest of the gang are improving and growing. I take this arc as a look at Shigaraki, as he is much more he's much like Deku in the sense that he's like budding and developing. And seeing Toga gain something beyond her infiltration stuff is pretty cool, I guess. She kind of posed the least threat offensively in terms of like big fights. Sadman's Parade was done pretty well, and I was overall pretty happy with the pacing of this arc because it feels like things are constantly happening. So I feel like it was adapted decently, especially considering how it got placed in a new slot, which changes the initial transition and such. And with the finale, I'd argue that aside from the cliffhanger, I'm mostly okay with it. I think the cliffhanger should have been something else, but I don't really want to get into that right now, and it really doesn't matter. So I'm going to move forward with the rant, and hopefully you guys will stay tuned for that. So the season of MHA was okay, I'd say. I think it's solid. I do have several problems with it. It feels like no one has any faith in people remembering events, so they had to recap all of, like, pretty much all the episodes from episode 1 to 13 constantly had recaps within them about, like, the last thing that happened. There's a lot of flashing back in the season, and, like, 2 minutes of flashbacks that weren't even shown in the manga. And it just feels like they don't trust people, the viewers, to remember any of this shit. And it doesn't feel right. I don't do a lot of these comparisons, but the choice to have the 2-minute flashback in the Yayorozu part with Todoroki's exam and all that was very intrusive and was kind of annoying because it was way too much. It showed way too much and refused to do the thing where it has faith that its fan base remembers, and if they don't remember, they can go check back themselves. On top of that, the recap at the beginning of every episode felt really pointless. There is almost no way within a week you will forget what is happening in a fight. And even then, when they bring you back into the event, you'll probably remember it. Other than that, this arc was handled fine, but Fight 2 is by far my least favorite group of canonical episodes in the entire season. Okay, I don't get the arc switch when people say it's for the movie. Like I understand why it would be for the movie. I'm just saying that making the arc switch because of the movie makes no sense, because movie 2 literally takes place in season 5 and it was produced in season 4. I'm not saying that people are wrong for assuming that it's because of the movie that the arcs were switched, but it doesn't make any sense to switch it because you've already done this before and you don't need to switch the arcs. But whatever. It's not that I don't like the decision, I just think the execution was very poor. On top of that, the beach episode takes place in the winter. We had a Christmas episode 3 episodes before, but it takes place in the winter. That's stupid. And on top of that, you have Endeavor recapping the events in, I think, episode 17 for half an episode. This doesn't happen in the manga, and I'm not saying that an adaptation should be one-to-one, but this recapping thing is super unnecessary. And here, I'm gonna get into a little rant, little bit. I guess Vigilante spoilers, but it really doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at this point. Here's what these 2.5 episodes that you could have gotten back from cutting out all this bullcrap could be for. The impact of the Kurogiri reveal is weak for anime viewers, and even manga readers sometimes, because the decision to separate Aizawa's backstory into Vigilantes, even though it is still a flashback from when Vigilantes takes place, because, you know, that's fun. So these 2.5 episodes could have been used to fit those, 5-6 chapters into this show, so you have the impact of the Kurogiri as Shirokuma reveal. But no, we're not going to do that, I guess. You know, it's just no one knows who Shirokuma is, and the impact falls short outside of Aizawa and Mike being more emotional than they usually are. That's great. There's a bit of lost content in MVA, and I think it hurts Spinner the most, as we only see a small portion of his story, or of his, like, inner monologue. I don't think this is a gigantic loss, as it could be explained later under different circumstances, and his small speech in episode 23 does kind of get his story across, but removing the creature rejection clan is a little bit of a loss for world building, and it's not essential, but I think it should have been included. In the end, I do think this arc mostly does what it needs to do, and it does it right, but I would still have liked everything in its original order. And that, you know, just, I don't see the point of switching it. There were no creative decisions made to convince me that switching the arcs was a good thing, because they ultimately kind of fibbed it. So, the verdict. I would not call this the best season of MHA. I think this season has some great content, but is ultimately cut short by the fixation on producing movies and lining up the anime with the movies. It creates a problem, and I really wish we could have had a regular produced anime with no concern for movies. I don't care how much the movies hurt or do not affect this anime as far as I'm concerned. If the movie is not adapting a canonical arc, I don't see the point of making it. I didn't see Heroes Rising in theaters. I have no intention of seeing World Heroes Mission in theaters. And yes, this season is the least well adapted out of the existing 5. But it's not as bad as I think people are making it out to be. I don't think this season is ruined or MVA was ruined, right? I think it was different, and because it's missing content, it's not the way we expected it. I don't think it's as bad as people bring it up to be, as like, oh, MVA ruined Season 5, or whatever, Season 5 ruined MVA, or whatever the case is. I just think that the execution needed to be better. And the execution just wasn't there. So yes, it is the least well-adapted season out of the existing 5. And it is also handled very poorly in the way of how they switched up things, as it could have been handled better. But I hope that future seasons recapture that excitement that I had before this season, because this one fell a little short of the bar. As always, thank you guys for watching, and if you like this video, then please leave a like down below, and if you want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button. Well, we won't be doing a lot of anime reviews. I don't watch that much anime, but I do a bit, just don't like to review it that often, usually don't have much to say about it. And if you disagree with me, or don't like my point of view, explain to me why you think that this season was better or worse than I'm putting it out to be. I'd like to see you guys' thoughts whenever you have something to say. It's honestly super interesting, and I like to see these different perspectives because it helps me build my understanding of what people think. Anyways, this has been Tiller, and I'll see you guys next week.